I think we're finally getting back to normal a little bit, fingers crossed, with all this COVID stuff. So now it's time to start thinking about all the parties and all the social gatherings that you're going to go to that you've been missing out on for the last 2 years. And it's time to start thinking about your party tricks again. You know, some people, they can like do the weird thing with their eyebrow. They can raise up just one side. I cannot do that. You know, or whatever your random party trick is. What if you told people your cool party trick was actually doing kegels in different parts of the pelvis? Everyone would be raving. You would be the sensation of the party. You're welcome. Hi, I'm Becky. Welcome to Wellness in the Pelvis. I'm a pelvic floor physical therapist and a mom, and I'm here to help you understand more about your body, especially in your pelvic floor. Today we're going to talk about something I get asked quite often. Can I do kegels in the front or the back, or how can I do them left versus right? Well, today that's what we're going to talk about. So let's shed some light on what's going on down there. The first thing that we need to remember is that a kegel is just a contraction of the pelvic floor muscles. If we go back and watch some of those older videos in the series, you'll learn exactly what a kegel means, but I think you'll get a good refresher today. Another thing to consider is, how do you exercise other muscles? There's more than one way to exercise any muscle in your body, and the same is true for the pelvic floor. If we use a different muscle group as an example, we'll talk about your quads. You know, with exercising your quads, you can do a regular squat. You can do a knee extension at the machine at the gym where you push your knees out. There's also the Bulgarian split squat, which terrifies me to even think about what that is. And then also a sissy squat, which definitely is not for sissies. My point is, you can do so many exercises to strengthen different muscle groups. And the same goes for the pelvic floor. Even though the muscles live inside the pelvis, you can still exercise these muscles in different ways. We're going to use the model here to help identify different ways that you can exercise the pelvic floor. Remove your organs again. You can keep yours because that would still be weird. But if we remember, all these muscles here in the pelvic floor on the inside and then on the outside, your goal when you're exercising them is to generally lift. And so that's what we're going to talk about first, is going up with the pelvic floor. We talked about this in previous videos when we talked about the elevators and blueberries and all that other good stuff. So check out some of the older videos in the series. But you can think about strengthening your pelvic floor that way, just by going up. Another way that you can exercise your pelvic floor is actually by pushing down with these muscles. We don't necessarily need to bear down a ton when considering exercising your pelvic floor. Really, we utilize that more functionally when you're trying to go poop and help get things out a little bit, or when you're pushing out a baby and you really need to know how to go down. So that's an exercise I'll often give people to help identify, yep, there's different ways you can move by going up or down, because it is important to know the difference between the two. Now, front versus back kegels. I get asked that question a lot. You can rotate the pelvis in different directions to feel it more in the front versus the back. And so if I've got the pelvis here sideways, so your hip bone's out here facing you, if you drop down the pubic bone or arch your back, you'll actually be more likely to feel the muscles of the front of the pelvic floor, just because of the way that the pelvis is oriented. Or if you flatten the pelvis or like tuck down the tailbone, you actually will be more likely to feel it in the back, kind of like by the anal sphincter. So you can play with that the position of the pelvis to feel it in different ways. There are different reasons why you would maybe arch the back or flatten the back to strengthen the pelvic floor. Arching the back or dropping down the pubic bone would maybe help strengthen some of the muscles around the urethra for the bladder. Some might help with a little bit of incontinence, or a cystocele, which is a bladder prolapse, or even like having pubic bone pain in pregnancy to help take some pressure off the bones in the front by strengthening the front muscles. And then flattening the spine or tucking down the tailbone to access one of the back muscles, we would maybe use that to help strengthen like the anal sphincter. If you're having some sort of like loss of stool or fecal incontinence, or have frequent passing of gas and we need to get the anal sphincter strengthened up a little bit. So there are different times where I would maybe do different positions with the pelvis for strengthening front versus back. But in general, if you're healthy, it's probably fine. And with all that rocking of the pelvis front and back, you might start getting pretty good at twerking too. Another party trick. Now, left versus right of the pelvic floor muscles. You really don't need to worry about that. I have some patients that are weaker on one side than the other. And that just is kind of something that happens. It's really nothing to worry about. That would be something to worry about if your pelvis starts falling apart. Left versus right, it really doesn't matter if one side's a little weaker than the other. You would never notice yourself if one side was a little weaker than the other. My job as a pelvic PT, I can help identify that, and then we just work on strengthening everything though, so not a big deal. I wouldn't really worry about left versus right. You know, if you're concerned about strengthening left versus right, front versus back, up versus down, the most important thing is that you are developing this brain-body connection and making muscle memories for how your pelvis is able to move and how to work your pelvic floor muscles. Most people don't even know how to activate their pelvic floor muscles correctly, and so the fact that you're even able to tease out different muscles by changing the position of your pelvis, extra bonus tips. So if you're just trying to strengthen your pelvic floor, I would just do some traditional kegels or watch the older videos in the series about my top 3 favorite pelvic floor strengthening exercises. So what other questions do you have? Are you now an expert twerker because you've watched this video? Let me know in the comments down below. Don't worry about that like or subscribe thing. It's not really my thing. I'm just here to help you understand more about your body. If that's something you're into, watch more videos. Thanks for coming. I'll see you next time. Bye.